The Sic Em Podcast is proudly presented by Harley-Davidson of Waco. Harley-Davidson of Waco is your home for Harley-Davidson motorcycles, service, accessories, and apparel. Visit in-store or at hdwaco.com to start your journey today, where you never ride alone. Welcome back to the Sic Em Podcast. I'm your host, John Morris. On today's episode, we get to know Baylor track and field head coach, Michael Ford. The Baylor alum and former two-time indoor national champion has been instrumental over the past 2 decades in Baylor's success on the track, mentoring countless All-Americans, program record holders, and national champions. Now in his 3rd year as head coach at his alma mater, Coach Ford is leading Baylor to nationals and is looking forward to an incredible opportunity with Team USA this summer at the Paris Olympics. Coach Ford, welcome to the Sic Em Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being with us. We'll let people know that you're busy. You're always busy.
Always.
But appreciate you making time to visit with us. And what a year. How about hosting 3 home meets this year? And it was supposed to be 4.
Yeah. The last one is probably going to make me only want to host one meet next year. But yeah, hosting three meets this year, especially finishing off with the Big 12 meet as the last one. But I thought our staff, especially Lucy Reed and Will Glasscock, did an awesome job getting our facility prepared for the meets. And then Jared, with the weather of the Big 12 championship, I thought we set it up really well, and so I'm looking forward to next year, but we'll probably just have 2 meets next year. We won't be hosting Big 12s again for a while, but looking forward to it.
For those who don't remember, that was during a stretch when there was literal flooding around. I mean, literally it was flooding in Central Texas, and y'all went late into the night, really all 3 days.
Yeah, I think I actually saw Moses in the Ark.
Yeah,
going
on
down
the Brazos.
So, yeah, late night track meets, 1 a.m., getting home about 2:30 a.m., getting ready the next day and I've never been to a meet where it happened 2 nights in a row.
Right.
And so it was just the staff. I also say the coaches from the other conference schools. They were very helpful in getting things, so we lost a lot of volunteers being that late. But I also thought that student athletes handled it really well, considering they're the ones competing, not us. But I thought but I've never been into a competition where Thursday night wasn't actually smooth, and then Friday the weather delays, and I mean you get home at like 2 a.m. and then the next day we basically had to cancel the running events. We canceled like the whole day.
Yeah. Wow, that's wild. And you mentioned Lucy, what a great job she did, and Will Glasscock, Colin Pirtle with Athletic Communications. Colin, what was the number, 46 and a half hours? 46 and a half hours was his time at the track, or time working over a 3-day weekend.
Well, we need to get him a pay raise.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
let's work on that.
Let's work on that.
All right. I'd be in favor of that. But all that to say, there were a lot of people that went above and beyond to make it a really good meet, despite the weather.
Yeah, I thought overall, I think like the performances that we had at the championships were fantastic. I wouldn't put, like I always tell people, the Big 12 championships, our Big 12 conference is probably one of the best. I'm not going to say probably. I know it's one of the best conferences in the country. We had some really good performances, including our student athletes performed really well here. And so besides the weather and the delays, I wouldn't change anything else.
It was great. New track surface for this season. How did it perform well?
It performed well. I give a shout out to Bynum. Bynum did an awesome job. So our next couple of track meets will be on Bynum. So we'll go at the NCAA last round in Oregon. It's Bynum material, and also at UT and I believe Arkansas. I think Arkansas might have Bynum.
Huh.
So
Yeah.
we'll be on Bynum quite a bit.
Huh.
Yeah.
Does that help that it's your home track and then you're going to be on that in those big meets?
Yeah, I think the big thing for us is Bynum. The reason why we went with them initially was because our old track was with Bynum, and we just have a really good relationship with the company. Also, it's a good track to train on. It's not too soft. It's not too hard. It's kind of right in the middle.
Nice.
I think the big thing that the biggest thing that we were more concerned about was they put a Hobart finish to make the color last longer with the Texas sun.
Right.
And sometimes it can get a little slick when it's wet if you don't have spikes on. But it held up really well, and it's getting better each month. Once it gets worn down, I think that finish is finally kind of, I guess, finishing.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I thought the track ran well. We had, like I said, the runways for some reason are really good, based off the performance we had with Alexis Brown
that's
and Molly Hayward. But I thought the track ran really well, and I'm very pleased with the surface.
2 Big 12 champs there, and Alexis, the Big 12 female Athlete of the Year.
Yeah.
What a great honor.
Yeah, I mean, she's the prime example of, you put the work in, you do everything right. You just kind of, I would say, bide your time. I mean, everybody kind of knows her story of those first couple of years of being injured and not knowing if she was going to be able to compete. And then everything kind of this year for her has been, she's still working hard, but I think, she loves jumping here. I think she broke the school record at the Clyde Hart meet, and then comes back at the Michael Johnson meet, breaks the school record again, even though it was already hers.
Right.
She breaks it again, and then at the Big 12 meet, after the young lady from Texas didn't go any farther on her sixth jump, we weren't really sure if Alexis was going to jump, just because she was cramping a little bit on her fifth jump, and then she was like, "No, I'm good. I'm going to go back and try another one," and then I just remember Coach Smith's face when she hit the board. You could hear it. She slapped that board, and Coach Smith said she did it.
Wow.
And before we even knew
she
the
landed.
jump, before she landed, she
Wow.
did it. And that's just, when you've been around good athletes, you kind of know those marks. And so then when it came up 22.5, we're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
But Coach Smith knew it exactly when she hit the board,
How about
which was
that?
crazy.
That is great. That's a good story. Yeah. It is Clyde Hart Track and Field Stadium in honor of Coach Hart, who you ran for during your time here.
Yes.
How much was Coach Hart around over the weekend?
Honestly, I didn't see him much.
Really?
I think because of the weather. But I'll give you a funny.
He's been around enough.
Funny story. So the Friday night, we had the delays, and Will Glasscock, Coach Shack were squeegeeing or trying to get the water out of the pit.
Right.
And Tom Hill gets an email or gets a text from Coach Hart, said, "Hey, those guys need to do this instead. They need to poke holes in the back of the ring, and the water will flow out of it." So Tom says, "Coach Hart, are you in the stands watching?" He said, "No, I'm on my recliner at home watching it on the TV."
On Big 12 Now.
On Big 12 Now. Yeah. So he was, even though he wasn't there, he was there in spirit. But he did come out. He came out on Thursday night. We talked a little bit, and he came out on Saturday for the finals. And so he's always been a big influence in my life, off the track and on the track. And I was glad that he was able to see the performances on Saturday.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, he's still going.
Yes.
at 90 years old.
Yes.
It's really amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
and still sharp as a tack, too.
Yes, very sharp as a tack. I mean, he gives me such good advice about just life in general, but just the fact about track, things that he saw even like in the 70s and the 60s that I can kind of use now with our athletes. But he's always been there for me, so I'm always so appreciative of everything he's done for me. And then also just being proud and say, "Hey, you did a great job. The team's doing well," and so that means a lot to me.
Talk about a guy who's got history and perspective. I mean, he'll go into a story about the Mexico City Olympics, right? In 1968. He was there in 1968.
Yeah, I mean,
that's some history.
Yeah, I mean, my first Olympic Games were in Athens, Greece, when Jeremy Warner and Darrell Williamson made the team. When they were, one was a sophomore and one was a junior.
Yeah.
And I remember me and him going together there. And he's like, I said, Coach, I don't need to go. You got it. He said, no, I need you to babysit them when I take my afternoon naps. So
That's great.
But it just gives me. But he gave me that opportunity at a young age. As I think that might have been like my 4th year as a coach.
That was 2004.
It was just a great opportunity for me to go experience the Olympic Games, and then it kind of propelled me to the 08 to 16 Olympics. So it meant a lot to me.
Man, that's great. You were recruited by Coach Hart to come here. Mm-hmm. What was that? What do you remember about that experience?
Well, I just remember not talking to him a whole bunch. The Michael Johnson was, back then they had volunteer coaches, but he was a volunteer coach. He called me quite a bit on the landline phone.
The landline.
At home. And I just remember talking to Coach. He said, hey, we want you here. I just need a yes or a no. But I remember sitting in his office at Floyd Casey, and we never talked about track. We never talked about track. He just talked about the Baylor experience, about getting a good education and being family. And those are the two things that it stuck with me. Wow. For until now. Yeah. We talked about the reason why he didn't talk about track is he said, I'm a great coach. I'll get you where you need to be. But if you want a quality education, you want the Christian atmosphere, you want a family, Baylor's a place for you.
Wow.
And that's all it took for me to come to Baylor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a full scholarship will help too.
Right.
but just him saying that, and he was more concerned about me as a person than as a student athlete. Yeah. He was just like, hey, this is what we want to do for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And having Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson.
Show you the ropes a little bit.
I mean,
that's pretty big influence
too.
He
picked me up. I remember flying from Dallas to Waco on a little propeller plane, but I'm walking down going down the steps of the plane, and I'm like looking out. I'm like, who's that guy in the Corvette? This white Corvette.
Right.
And it's Michael Johnson. Yeah. And I was
You're sold?
I was sold then.
Right.
But then we had dinner together that night. We talked a little bit about track, and then and then that was probably the last time I saw him.
Wow.
But and then I hung out with Tony Miller and Deion Minor, and Deion, I think Tony Miller was maybe a junior or a sophomore. Deion was a freshman.
Okay.
So I got a chance to hang out with them. It was the same weekend where the Farrell Center had a gas leak at a basketball game.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Yeah, and so I love basketball. I'm a big basketball fan. And so I remember driving up to the Farrell Center. The police cars, the fire trucks were all there. They was like, no game.
No game.
No game.
It was A&M, of all opponents, too.
Yeah, and so I remember not going to a game.
Yeah.
And so I get home, and the weather was kind of crappy, too. And I remember going home, my mom was like, oh, how's your business? I said, it was okay. Huh. And she said, was it hot? I said, no, it was raining and miserable. And she said, oh, we can check Baylor off the list, huh? And I was like, no, I think I'm going to go.
Wow.
And it was just because of what Coach Hart had said to me. And I always have to put things in perspective. Every weekend is not going to be a big weekend. Sometimes you're not going to want to go out or do things, or you might have to study. So for me, it was more, hey, these are the people that I'm going to be around for the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I could see myself being in Baylor. And I didn't want to go to a really big school. And the 16,000 was fine for me. And I knew Baylor had a great business school. And I was able to graduate from our business school, too. Nice. So that was a big thing for me.
And quarter miler you.
Oh, yeah. That helps.
How much of a factor was that history when you decided to come here?
It was big, I think, just because of Michael Johnson and Raymond Pierre. Those are the two that I knew of coming from high school. And then also I did a little bit of history on Willie Caldwell because he was our first national champ. But then I also knew about Deion. Deion, he was a year ahead of me, but he was the number one quarter miler coming out of high school. And then, of course, Tony Miller, who else was coming? And then Raul Howard, who ended up being my roommate. He was one of the top 400-meter runners in Texas. So we had a bunch that I knew the core that were going to be here. And so I said, hey, I want to be a part of that.
That's really cool. I'm sure there were things you learned in your time with Coach Hart that that you continue now as the head coach?
Yeah, he just told me to be patient. You don't have to run fast. One of the things we always talk about is not running fast really early. The most important, for me, even as recruiting, the most important meets are the conference championship, now the regional meet, or the first round, the NCAAs and nationals. And so you need to be ready for those meets mentally and physically. And so that's one of the things he always talked about. And then he also taught me big on reloading, or you have these basically peaks and valleys. So your peak is the conference meet, and then you have to go back down to the valley to kind of reload. And then you go back to another peak for the first round of NCAAs, and then you have another valley where you're getting ready again, and then you have another peak for nationals. So we always talk about not having, some people say, well, are you getting them ready for this meet? I'm like, no, I'm just getting ready for all the meets, because I don't know if I do my job right, they'll run fast when it counts. And so we've never thought about, I never think about, they're going to jump really well at this meet or run really fast at this meet. If I do my job during the week, I know when it counts, because the competitions get harder, so you have to run faster. But just making sure when they do have a big peak, like we had at Big 12s, now this week is kind of like a reload week, and then we'll get ready for the first round.
The Sic Em Podcast is proudly presented by Harley-Davidson of Waco. Harley-Davidson of Waco is your home for Harley-Davidson motorcycles, service, accessories, and apparel. Visit in-store or at hdwaco.com to start your journey today, where you never ride alone.
Sheesh, what great knowledge, that you learned from him and now pass on to the current student athletes. When you were here during your running days here, twice national champion, 4x4 relay, 6-time All-American, and you came from Rochester. I know you're proud of your background in Rochester, New York, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, I'm a city boy at heart.
Yeah.
Rochester is probably one of the roughest cities growing up in, but the people are great. The people are great there. I think it just taught me how to work. A lot of blue collar workers up there. The weather makes you harder. You get snow pretty much from June to December. Yeah. But I think that area just taught me how to work. That was a big thing, and then if I can run 46.6 in high school in New York when it's cold and wet, then I could probably do it in Texas. Yeah. But I think it was just the fact that my club coach, Cedric Walker, was a great influence on me. He was one of the first black men that I knew that actually graduated from college. He was a high school teacher, had a club team, but he also cared. And so I remember just him picking me up every day after practice, after my high school practice, to take me to do a little bit more training. But he had a big influence on me too. He was like a coach that when I got into coaching, I would call him a lot too. Nice. So between Coach Hart, Cedric Walker, Tim Hale, who was my first college coach when I got hired at the University of Rochester. Those are the three big influences on me when I first started, and now Coach Holloway at the University of Florida. It's been big for me too.
Nice.
Yeah.
When did you get the bug to coach, or when was that idea first born?
Oh man, actually I was still working out on the track. Matter of fact, I was at the University of Rochester jogging with one of my good friends, Tracy Fox, and Tim Hale came up to me and said, "Mike, I need a huge favor." And I'm like, "What's the favor, Coach?" He said, "I need you to coach this year." My coach, one of my assistant coaches just left, got another job. And I'm like, I don't want to coach track. Yeah. Never thought about it. I was actually working at a law firm in marketing. I was enjoying that life, just a 9 to 5. And he said, "Do you want to do that?" He said, "Do you want it?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "You can make your own hours." He said, "I just need you here for an hour and a half every day." So I prayed on it. talked to my mom. She was still big influence on me and tell me things I need to do, not to do. Cedric was big. I was like, Cedric, you think I can do this? He's like, yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. He said, what's the worst thing that can happen? They can run slow. Okay, fair enough. And so I ended up doing that. So gave Coach Hale my answer. My first year, I think God put you in places at the right time. That year, all the kids, especially in the sprinters and jumpers that came in, they were all freshmen. So we only had one sophomore in my group. So I had probably like 12 athletes, and they were all, the rest of them, out of the 12, 11 were freshmen. Wow. So I didn't know a whole bunch. They didn't know a lot either. But I knew how to run. And so I think with the help of Coach Hart and Cedric, putting workouts together helped me. That year, my first year, we won our conference championship, indoor and outdoor. And so I was like, oh man, track is easy, you know? But, and then Coach Hale decided to retire right after that, and another coach came in, and I stayed around for 2 more years. And then I think the second year was the year that I got the itch to, like, you know what, I think I want to do this.
Nice.
Where you can go wear shorts and T-shirts and be around young people. I just felt that that's something I wanted to do. And so as I'm still working at the law firm, of course, for 3 years, Coach Hart gives me a call and says, Mike, I got a question. I was like, what's up, Coach? Do you want to come back to Baylor to coach? I said, sure. I said, do I need to come down for an interview? He said, oh, this is it. This is it on the phone. He said, we don't need to fly you in. He said, the next time you'll fly in is when you take the job. And so we had talked over the last 3 years just about training and you know, I was trying to build my philosophy in coaching, but just talking to Coach Hart a bunch. And then I think Stacy Smith, she had a big influence because she was still in Waco, and she said, hey, I think Mike will do a good job. And so I owe her a lot too, and Tom Hill. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Pretty easy job interview. I mean, you'd already done the work. So.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for me was at the University of Rochester, it was only part-time.
Oh, okay.
It was a part-time job, and I think I was making maybe like $150 every 2 weeks. I said, Coach Hart, is this part-time or full-time?
That's a fair question.
That was probably my number one thing I asked him. He's like, Coach, it's full-time for sure, but I owe Coach Hale a lot just because he gave me a chance, and I'll never forget. Probably about 6-7 years into it, I was in North Carolina. He had just moved to North Carolina when he retired, and I was at a track meet. The weather was delayed again.
Of course, yeah.
And I was at one of the high school national meets, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna drive down to see Coach Hale. And I said, Coach, so I ended up going down, had dinner with him. I said, Coach, I never asked you this question. I said, why did you hire me? And he said, well, Mike, you remember when you were at Baylor, he said in the summer times I used to go back, and he had a sports camp. And I worked at sports camps for like 3 years. He said, Mike, you did a great job with those kids. He said, you're a people's person. He said, the X's and O's, learning that'll come easy for you. But knowing how to talk to young people, he said, that's the reason why I hired you. Wow. He said, the X's and O's, you'll learn that easily.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you say that, because when we had Felicia Mulkey sitting in that same chair, when we had her on a Sic Em podcast, that's what she said. She said she deals with people, and it's a people first, relationship first job, and then the X's and O's come. Yeah. But she said almost the same thing you just said.
And I think that's the thing. That's the one thing I love about the Baylor coaches. I think that when you treat kids, I'm not going to call them kids, but when you treat student athletes a certain way, they'll do a lot for you. And I think the big thing is they have to know that you care about them first, and then so you treat them like a person first, and then the athlete part of it will come, because to me that's the easy part. But you just don't know what because we're not 18, 19-year-old anymore, so we have to try to get into their heads and figure it out. But I think for us, is making sure that they know that we care about them. Yeah.
It's the old they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly.
It sounds like it's worked really well for you. 22 years here at Baylor.
Yeah.
How about that?
Long time. Yeah.
22 years. That's great. And congratulations to you. We talked about the Olympics earlier. You're going to be the Team USA coach for sprints and hurdles for the 2024 Olympics in Paris. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How'd that come about?
Man, I'm looking forward to it. I think Someone, I don't know who, but just nominated me again for the position. There's only two teams I haven't been a part of yet. It's been the Olympic team and the World Championship teams. And someone nominated me. They voted on it, and then I got the selection. And so looking forward to going to Paris in, I guess, almost 3 months. About 3 months now. Yeah.
Starting to see all the Paris Olympic promos on NBC, so it's getting close.
Yes, I actually got an email today, just over some information and my flight information to go out. So now I have to kind of book my seats on the plane and get ready to go.
How much time does that take right now?
Honestly, no. We had a Zoom call probably about a month ago, just kind of introducing ourselves to each other, the staff, the men and women staffs, and that's it. And I think the next big meeting we'll have will be at the Olympic trials.
Oh wow, yeah.
Because the thing that we don't know, everybody's like, well, who are you gonna coach? We just don't know until the trials happen.
Right.
And so we have basically 2 weeks. Our trials start June 21st and on the 30th, and so we'll know part of our team that first week, and then we'll know the next part of the team the last week. And I think for USA's we always have like a 2 days off, so like that Monday on the second week, the Monday and Tuesday kind of be off days of no track meets.
Okay.
So that'll be the time where we'll do some team processing, and you can kind of get to know some of the athletes that made it for week one. And then we'll kind of get our last bit of assignments after that.
Yeah. That is really cool. I'm so happy for you.
No, thank you.
And it's not like you go out and recruit, I mean, they're going to qualify through the USA trial. I mean, they're going to give you the team. Or the team is going to, define itself, right?
And that's a good thing. I mean, we're probably one of the deepest teams, one of the deepest countries. And so it's just, most countries know exactly who's going to make their team, and us is just that the day of who are going to be the top 3 people per event. Even our relays, even though we've already got the qualifying standard for the Olympics, but we still don't know our top 4 guys or our top 4 women. So it's just trying to figure that out. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And are you the men's and women's?
Well, I'm just on the men,
okay.
But we have a thing where we just kind of combine everything together. So if the ladies need help or vice versa, we help each other out.
Cool. Mentioned 2004 was the first Olympic you went to in Athens, which was a good first one to go to. Have you been to every one since then?
No, I went to 2008.
Okay.
And that was in Beijing, Beijing, China. And then I went to Rio with Trayvon. So the next one will be my next one.
I got you. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So but you've got some international experience going to the Olympics.
Yes.
This is a little different, though, isn't it?
A lot different. I mean, 'cause normally I've gone as a personal coach. So I'm usually the person that's calling the USA coaches to figure out practice times and where they're going to be, what time the check-in area, making sure that piece. Now I'm going to be that person they're going to probably be calling, and so right now is just trying to build the relationships with the personal coaches to make sure that whatever questions they have, I can answer those questions for them.
That was my next question. I mean, most of the guys at this level, they've got personal coaches.
Yeah.
You have been that, for Trayvon most recently, Trayvon Bromell. As the Team USA coach, how do you work with? Do you work hand in hand, side by side with the personal coaches?
Yeah, we kind of let them do what they want to do. Yeah, we just try to make sure if they're not there, we can tell them about the what time we want to practice. And then like when we have relay practices, our relay coaches will tell them. We want to just make sure they're in the call room. That's probably the most stressful part, where when they're warming up and say if you run at 1 o'clock, they have to be in the call room by like 12:40, and the coaches are still trying to do something. We're like, no, you got to hurry up, because a lot of times once that deadline comes, they shut the door and you can't come in.
Wow.
And so
you can't miss that.
Yeah, you can't miss that. And so we're always being mindful of the coaches and letting them do what they did, because they're the ones that got them there. But we just want to make sure that they respect the USA coaches and say, hey, I'm just the messenger for this message. But and a lot of the personal coaches, at least on the sprint side, I know already, and so I'll just communicate with them. Hey, this is what time we're leaving the hotel or the village, and we'll be at the track at this time.
Gotcha. Are you I mean, you've been to the Olympics. I've never been to an Olympics, but I can imagine the national pride. And when you see somebody on the victory stand, they're raising the USA flag and playing the national anthem.
Yeah.
Gosh, what an experience.
Yeah. I think the experience of the Olympics is you representing yourself and you're representing your family, but you're also representing your country. I think those are all three important parts. And then two, the Olympics only come every 4 years. And so for you to be able to go for one is incredible, but for you to get a medal is even more incredible because you're one of the best in the country. The only three people get medals.
Yeah.
And you're the best. You were the best person or best three people at that time. And so I think and then hearing that anthem. Yeah. I mean, it's just breathtaking to see that. And so for me, it's gonna be, I'm not gonna say it's gonna be emotional or anything, but I think just having that pride, the U.S. pride is everything. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's emotional just to sit at home and watch it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
for people I don't know. And then, I mean, I remember back to Michael and, you know, several Olympics, but 96 in Atlanta in particular, I was crying like a baby, you know, watching that.
Yeah. And I think just the hard work that you put in, I mean, you like for him that year, I mean, you work your butt off for months and months, you make the team, and then, I mean, you even go back when he was on the 92 Olympics.
92.
When he was probably I'm not gonna say probably, he was the best runner in the world at that time. And
one bad meal.
One bad burger got sick. And then he didn't have, and then that was his Olympic experience, but then he had to wait 4 years again to do that again. And so I could just imagine how he felt, I mean, when he finally, with the gold shoes and doubling and winning, and all the pressure, especially for him that year, it was in the U.S.
That's right.
So you have the pressure of not performing as well as you should have in 92, but now you got it in 96, where now you've made this bold statement that, hey, I'm gonna win both of them. That's the goal, and you're also in the U.S.
Yeah,
you know,
all that.
Yeah, so you have all that, and then I think it was just once he did it, it was like, whew, I did it, you know. But it's just his mental. I mean, he was so mentally strong that no one was gonna beat him at those meets at that Olympic game.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a busy summer, but that'll be fun for you, won't it?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rest of this season with the team, and then I can focus on the Olympics. Yeah.
Very cool. Proud for you. That's great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Represent Baylor, represent USA.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Thanks for being with us on the Sic Em Podcast.
No, thank you for having me again.
Thanks again for joining us on the Sic Em Podcast, a sport and story production. If you enjoyed this conversation with Michael Ford, head over to BaylorPlus.com or the official Baylor Athletics YouTube channel, where you can watch the premium video version of this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast, leave a review, and tell your friends about us. I'm your host, John Morris, and I hope you'll join us next week on another edition of the Sic Em Podcast.